Hi, UNO alumni out there in virtual land.
You still there, Rachel?
I am. It just said I was. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, it just said I was muted, so I just wanted to double check. So hello, all of you UNO alumni out in virtual land. I hope you're all safe and well and enjoying this from your homes this evening. We are here to welcome Chef Mark Springfloat, who is the director of the Food and Beverage Program in the Hospitality School at the University of New Orleans. Previously executive chef at a Chapelaya restaurant. He developed their famous recipe for shrimp and grits, which hopefully many of you have enjoyed. And he's agreed to be here with us tonight to present a little bit on Wine 101 basics, and we'll be tasting a few if you have them on hand. This session is part of our virtual Meet Us At series. We're rolling out webinars via the Alumni Association platform for things that are hopefully informative, educational, and also fun, which we hope tonight will be. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself and give Mark the stage. We will be using the chat function for question and answer. So if you have any questions for Chef Mark, please go ahead and type them into chat. He'll be monitoring them and answering them at a few different pause points within the presentation. So thank you. Hope you're well. Enjoy.
All right. Greetings. I had to Zoom from my basement today. I hope you don't mind. It's a little quiet down here, but I like it. Anyway, we're going to talk about some basics with wine, something I'm very much into, and I think a lot of you are too. I would hope so. So really what I want to do is just talk about some basics. Then we're going to get into some tasting. I sent out to the panel the wines that I'll be tasting tonight, so hopefully some of you can play along at home. So let's just go ahead and get into it here. So when we talk about grapes in general, this is one of the biggest crops in the world. They tend to grow between 30 and 50 degrees north latitude and 30 to 40 degrees south latitude all over the world. Globally, the grapevine covers about 20 million acres, producing about 6 tons of fruit, 8% of which are exclusively for wine. Some of the biggest players in winemaking are, of course, the old world, France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Germany, Austria, but also New World. United States is big in the wine market. China is up and coming. Be on the lookout for their wines in some years down the road. There's also Middle East, Northern Africa, and then Southern Hemisphere, where you find a lot of deals. In particular, South America, Chilean and Argentinian wines, South African wines. They have actually developed their own grape called Pinotage, which is really an interesting wine, as well as Australia and New Zealand. Now, some of the up-and-coming practices, we're dealing with sustainable viticulture using organic techniques, composting, natural insect control, recycling, more just natural holistic approach to the wines. And then on top of that, there's this other subject called biodynamic. This is like organic wines kind of on steroids. It takes it one step forward, recognizes the entire planet as an ecosystem. Sometimes it gets a little too new agey, almost to the point of holding crystals over the grapes to tell when it's time to pick them. They do a lot by cycles of the moon. Some of these guys are really onto something. That they're producing some really kind of delicious wines out of these biodynamic. Washington State is one of the leaders in biodynamic wines. So if you're interested, check them out. There's some real gems in there. They try as much as possible just to operate as a closed system where everything is done in the vineyard itself, and the winery itself. They're making, producing, and bottling. All right, so what is wine? Wine is grape juice, right? And what do we do with this grape juice? We ferment it with yeasts. What does yeast do? Yeast eats sugar. When yeast eats sugar, it does two things. It burps, makes carbon dioxide, and it secretes alcohol. These are the two predominant byproducts of yeast consuming sugars. What stops it? There's a few things that can stop this fermentation. One is when the alcohol content gets up to 16, 17, 18, 19%, it kills off the yeast. They can't live in that environment. If the yeast eats all the sugar, if it's converted to everything, then the yeast dies off. Or the winemaker himself or herself can intervene and stop the fermentation process by chilling the wine down to a temperature at which the yeast can no longer function, or by fortifying the wine and adding a distilled brandy, grape spirit into the wine to boost that alcohol content. That's where you get into these sweeter wines. This is what's known as a fortified wine. And then the what we call the lees, the dead yeast cells and any other sediment in the wine will fall down to the bottom of the barrel. And it can rest on that and develop nuttier flavors. You can batonnage or stir the wine back up into the lees to increase flavor that way. So before we get our wine into the bottle, what are the major influences? Well, first and foremost, of course, there's the variety of the grape itself, because they all have different flavor profiles, and there's also blends, which comes into the winemaker. Secondly, climate, soil, then lastly, palate of the winemaker. When you get into a grape like Chardonnay, this is where you can really show the skill of the winemaker. Or when we get into blending grapes, that's where the winemaker comes into play. What types of wine are we dealing with? Predominantly, there's three. There's a still wine, a sparkling wine, which a lot of people call champagne, which only can come from Champagne, France. But sparkling wines, anything that's carbonated or even slightly effervescent. A fortified wine is another one where the winemaker has added alcohol. You get into your ports and your sherries this way. There's another fourth category, aromatized, where aromatics have been added now. So now we're talking about something more along the lines of vermouth. So we talked about the fermentation, the yeast process. What else is in wine? Well, we're dealing with about 80 to 85% just water. After that, we're talking about alcohol. Here we're dealing with ethyl alcohol or ethanol, which is the main product of fermentation. We're talking about 8.5 to 15% alcohol. This is what's giving the wine its body and its weight, so to speak, the warmth or heat. Anybody drinks straight alcohol, you get that warming, that burning almost sensation. And when it comes to wine, alcohol should never dominate the taste of the wine. If you're sipping wine and all you taste is alcohol, it's a very rudimentary, unskilled amateur wine that you're drinking there. It should be integrated into the overall impression of the wine. So after that, we start to get into our acids, right? Tartaric acid, that accounts for about a quarter of the total acid. It's also the strongest acid in the wine. There's citric acid is present, but not necessarily predominant in grapes. After here, we have what's called malic acid. This is the most fragile acid. It'll break down in hot conditions, and we can introduce lactic bacteria, and we get into a process called malolactic fermentation, and it will convert our malic acid into lactic acid, which is same as dairy. And this is where we get you hear the oaky and buttery descriptions, most commonly in Chardonnay. That's when that wine has gone through malolactic fermentation. Nearly all reds go through malolactic fermentation, and some whites. That's by choice of the winemaker, and it's usually in white wines very obvious when something's gone through it. That's that butteriness, that creaminess. The acids also help preserve freshness, protect against bacterial damage and some premature aging. White wines will have higher acid levels than red wines. If you guys want a good buzzword, if you're drinking a white wine that's a little low in acid, it can be referred to as a flabby wine. The acid, one way to it kind of makes it salivate. It's a little bit tart. After that, the sugar. Yeast can never fully convert all the sugar. They're not all fermentable, so all wine will have at least about a 0.2% residual sugar, or RS, and we're talking with grapes, it's glucose and fructose that are converted through fermentation. After that, like, okay, so red wine. Some people don't like red wines. They're too dry. They make your, kind of your cheeks pucker in or whatnot. This is from the tannin in the wine. The tannin, they're polyphenols that are extracted from skins, seeds, stems, and the oak that it's aged in will give us our tannin. It's kind of like, if you think about like black tea, imagine putting a used tea bag on your tongue. You get this super dryness to it, this kind of puckeriness to it, but it really gives some wine some great body. It's a wonderful attribute to wine. I love tannins in wine. What else? After that, we're pretty much down to esters, or the aromas. This is kind of the most important distinguishing feature of any wine. Somebody will pick up their glass and say, I smell banana peels that have been in the sun for 6 months in the Mediterranean during the dry season, right? Now, that's an extreme example of it, but wine will consist of over 200 different compounds, some of those found in fruits, vegetables, spices, and herbs, and it's not uncommon to smell banana, clove, even green peppers into your wines. It works. The sense of smell works with the sense of taste, so we can actually kind of smell some of these flavors. The human nose can be trained to identify roughly about 1,000 different scents. So it's quite the game in wine class. In fact, we have an aroma kit. It's a great game we play every class, where I have a kit of 88 different aromas, and every day when the students come in, they will go to the table where they sign in and have about 5 or 6 different aromas, and everybody writes down on an index card what they think it is, and we go through it, and we argue about no way, or yeah, I totally got that, that was easy. And at the end of the semester, it's extra credit. I'll put 5 throughout the kitchen, and everybody gets to go through with an index card one at a time. Whoever, if you get any of them right, it's 1 full point just on the top of your grade, and it's a lot harder than you think. Rosé wine, I'm going to get into that when we start talking about rosé, so fret not. So I think if we're going to talk about wine, especially on a Wednesday night in a non-credit webinar, we should be drinking a little bit of wine. So what I'd like to do now is just kind of show you how to open up a bottle of wine. So here we have a bottle of, I'm going to need to stand in front of it. Right, my basement's haunted, obviously, right? And of course, the bottle's green, so we're in big trouble now. So this is a bottle of white Bordeaux, Chateau Saint Bernard. Not that Saint Bernard, all right? So this is from Bordeaux, France. And Bordeaux, France is on the southern coast of France with a river that comes out, and it's basically split into 3 sections. There's the left bank, which is to the south, then the Entre de Mer, which is between the 2 rivers, the Doindres and the Gorgon, and then the right bank. And this is a very extremely famous region of France. It's one of my favorites. Martin Wine Cellar has been having a Bordeaux for $1 sale all month, for actually 2 months, so I've been drinking a lot of Bordeaux. I know, wow, right? So this is from the right bank of Bordeaux. And the other thing about Bordeaux and French wines in general, I don't know if you can see that, there's no, I can't see it at all, but there's no mention of the grape on here. And that's the thing about French wines. You need to know the area. So for instance, this is white Bordeaux. I know I'm drinking a blend. All Bordeaux wines are blend. I'm drinking Semillon and Sauvignon Blanc. Delicious, 2 great tastes that go great together, right? So what we're going to do here, we'll take our wine key. All right, and the first thing we want to do is a little cut. Let's see, maybe I'll stand up to do this. right along the top of the bottle. I'm going to come back and then flip our lid off. And then what I like to do, take the point of the corkscrew and just put it from the side right into the middle of the cork, press and pull it up. And then we start turning. And c'est bon. Now, you see a lot of times, well, what happens is when you serve this in a restaurant, now you would pour a little bit in the glass and present it to the person that ordered the wine along with the cork. A lot of people think it's to sniff the cork. Sniffing the cork is akin to kicking the tires of a car when you go to buy it. You know, maybe it's got a little more to it, but what you're doing is inspecting the cork, make sure it's not dry rotted or has any mold or anything on it. But this originally it came about for a much more practical reason. It's to make sure that the label on the cork matches the label on the bottle. So nobody took your Chateau Neuf de Pape and poured Kendall Jackson into it and served it to you for $150 at a restaurant. All right. So now we have our bottle open. Another thing I want to mention is serving temperatures. People tend to drink their wines too warm or too cold. Ideally for white wines, you want to be between 45 and 55. So the refrigerator is just a little too cold for it. Red wines, 55 to 65. Sparkling wine, about 40 to 45 degrees. Next thing we're going to do is pick our glass. And stemware is actually important. They're designed for different wines. There's a white wine glass, I guess free plug. It's a Riedel, it's crystal, probably about a $12 to $14 glass. They're great. If you don't have a nice set of stemware, I'd recommend investing in it. It's great. It only sucks when you break them. Now we're going to pour our wine right here. We want to leave room in the glass for these odors, these esters, aromas to start developing. And then we're going to get ready to taste. So the first thing we want to do is look at the color. All right, so look at it from a few different angles. All right, straight on, straight down, kind of from up above into a light is one of my favorites. Another one, especially with reds, take a piece of white paper and hold it, and you can kind of look through it and really see a good representation of the color. Now, I thought we might be a little more interactive here, so we really can't talk about the colors we're seeing, but I'm kind of getting like a pale yellow, some a little bit of light greens into it. I mean, almost that classic Sauvignon Blanc. And after that, what we want to do is smell. And we want to smell once before we swirl, because a lot of those tertiary aromas are just kind of laying right on top of the wine glass, which is why we have the lot of headspace in here, is so the aromas can build up in there. So we'll go ahead and you're gonna stick your nose right in there and breathe deep. You don't need to dip it in the wine, but you want to get in there to give it a really nice nasal appraisal. You know, and I'm definitely getting those Sauvignon Blanc aromas. I get a little bit of ammonia. Then we're going to swirl a little bit. We can check out the legs. It's an indication of alcohol content in the glycerol. And another thing, notice I'm not holding. You never want to hold a wine glass like this. Stemware has a stem for a reason. The heat of your hand will get the wine too warm. So you always hold your glass by the stem. Now you can get highfalutin and walk around and hold it like that. That's fun too, right? The aroma, let's see if I can do this. That's my aroma wheel. So the thing to think about aroma, you know, you don't want to go right away, oh, I smell, like I said, bananas on the Mediterranean in the dry season. What you want to do, I have an aroma wheel here I want to show you. Gonna work. All right. So we see here, this is much more simple, right? So do you smell, what do you smell? Do you smell fruit? Is it floral? Is it spicy? Is it chemical? Is it earthy? Is it woody? Is it vegetable? Right. So see, I smell this. I do get kind of a little bit of chemical, a little bit of ammonia, which is typical of a Sauvignon Blanc. If you get into some of these uh, Loire Valley Sauvignon Blancs, it's almost like cat urine. It's so intense, but it doesn't taste that way. So for me, I'm getting mostly like vegetable, right? Some grass, some herbs, a little bit of fruit, kind of more like some tree fruit, maybe some apple, some pear, right? And then from there, that's the easy way. So you always want to think kind of broad and then try and narrow it down from there. And then from there, you can get really crazy with it, okay? So now I said I smell fruit, tree fruit, what kind? All right, so I'm getting a little, maybe a little pear, maybe a little green apple, right? I can almost see a little banana or something out of here. I don't know if anybody else is drinking this at home. Please chime in with what you're getting out of your nose with it. And these are all over the internet. You can just pull something off. There's also color wheels, but they weren't translating as well. All right, anything up here? All right, is the virtual panel, virtual background, is that bad? So I'm going to show that I'm not in my basement. Let's see, this is no fun. Let's see how messy things are around here. I've been very busy. Package still by the front door. All right, is that better? All right. And here we have grass seed and a little bit of citrus coming in here. That's much better. So now, after we finally, we do our little taste, our swirl, our smell, our visual. Now we're going to get to taste. See, this is just a lovely, lovely little white Bordeaux. I've been drinking a lot of this since it's been on sale. I don't know if anybody took advantage of the Martin sale on this, but this is, I think, $18 or $19 bottle of wine. They've been doing for $1. You get the second bottle. So it's a steal. And we're going to talk about that. How are we doing on time? We are dying on time. Yeah. All right, I'm obviously talking too much. Oops. All right. All right, so we'll go through some grapes real quickly because there's some information I want to get to about purchasing wine and whatnot. Wine styles, you're basically 3 styles, kind of crispy and youthful, more silky and smooth, and these kind of richer, more voluptuous, full-body white wines. We're going to talk about, well, we'll start here. This one's more of a richer white wine, but it's a very popular wine, a Chardonnay grape. This, like I said earlier, is kind of the winemaker's palate. It can go so many different ways. This is really the sign of a good winemaker, is what you can do with a Chardonnay grape. Now, there's kind of mainly 2 styles. It's at one point, it was almost like American versus French style. I still lean more towards the French style Chardonnay. It's more a true expression of the grape. There's not as much oak on it. It's more stainless steel or concrete fermentation and storage, where the classic California Chardonnay is this oaky and buttery, right? So you have this malolactic fermentation, and it's got a lot of oak aging on it, being in barrel. Or another way you can do it is you can have it in stainless steel tanks and then put oak staves in there, or even oak chips. It's naturally high in sugar and potentially low in acidity, so it can, it can ferment well and have a lot of potential from malolactic fermentation or from surly aging, which is letting the wine sit on the lees for an extended period of time. We're going to pick up more nutty, more yeasty kind of flavors to it. Chardonnay likes cooler climates. This is one of the grapes of Champagne, France. It's one of the 3 grapes that Champagne can be made from. And y'all know, I hope that you can make a white wine from a red grape, right? The color comes from the contact with the skins, the seeds and the stems. So if you just press it, the juice is all clear in any grape. In Champagne, France, you can only make Champagne from Chardonnay, which is a white grape, Pinot Meunier and Pinot Meunier, which are both red grapes. And you can have what's called a Blanc de Noir, which is a white Champagne from red grapes, or there's Blanc de Blanc from white, or just Champagne. So and anytime you're drinking Champagne, it's to be called Champagne, it has to be from Champagne, France, and only those 3 grapes are allowed. Let's see, this is the white grape of Burgundy. So if you would be drinking a white Burgundy, you're drinking Chardonnay. All right. A lot of production here in the United States, South Africa, Portugal, Germany. It's really kind of all around the world. New York is doing a lot of Chardonnay. Next, Sauvignon Blanc, very popular grape. It's in this one right here. This originated in southwestern France and in the Loire Valley, which is up north, absolutely beautiful area. And Bordeaux, this is one of the white grapes of Bordeaux. Classically, you're going to get a lot of grassy herbs, maybe some asparagus, some citrus, lemon, grapefruit, lime, maybe some tropical like guava or like honeydew and cantaloupe. Just kind of blew through this really quickly. Riesling. This is a very popular wine. I like a dry Riesling, the sweet Riesling. I'm not so much a fan of. I don't like a lot of residual sugars in my wine. I'm sorry. This is a native grape to Germany, the most significant locations in the world. This is the grape of Germany, and then also Alsace, France. So you're getting a lot of Riesling, you get a lot of tree fruit, pineapple, raisin, still some citrus, lemon, lime, maybe some honey. Trying to make up a little time. Semillon, this is the other white grape of France. It's a blending grape. And this is in Bordeaux, they blend it with Sauvignon Blanc. And you get a wide range of dry to sweet wines. In Sauternes, Semillon is used for a dessert wine that goes through a process called botrytis, or the noble rot, which we don't have time to go in through. Here again, we're getting citrus, some tropical fruits, maybe some grass, maybe this bake shop aromas again. And again, this can be a dry or sweet wine, but it's definitely, I think, an underappreciated wine in this country. And, you know, I don't drink a lot of whites, but when I do, it tends to be white Bordeaux. All right, Pinot Grigio and Pinot Gris. It's the same grape. It's just the other side of the Alps. My mom, I love her to death, right? Loves Pinot Grigio. Can't get her to try Pinot Gris. It's the same grape, right? Both Gris and Grigio. Gris and Grigio. It means gray. It kind of the grapes have this like kind of pinkish gray hue. It's a unique color, so hence Pinot Gris or Pinot Gray. This is another big one in the United States as well. Italy, huge. It's nuanced again with some citrus fruit, maybe some pear and some apricot. We get into some of these bake shop again with almond and honey. Tend to be very crisp, medium to high in acidity, and light to medium in body. And you hear this term like talking about body in wine. I tell people to think about like milk, right? Whole milk, skim milk, and 2% milk. A light body wine is going to be like skim milk. A medium body is going to be like 2%, and a full body is going to be more like a whole milk. Viognier is another grape you don't see a whole lot in this country, mainly Rhone Valley, Languedoc-Roussillon in France. You do see it in Central Coast California and Australia. It's more intense aromatic grape, a very distinctive, deep golden yellow, rich, full body, a lot of floral, tree fruit, in particular peach. We get into some more tropicals, and again with this bake shop aromas. All right, my goal was to be through that in 30 minutes, which I think we just did. Any questions about whites? Because I kind of want to move on to reds. All right, see, I got text and chat going on. Let's see, are there any aromas that signify the wine may no longer be good? Yeah, if a wine is corked, things get really funky. Maybe you're gonna smell like there's one of my favorite scents in the aroma kit. It's called horse sweat, and you'd have to smell it to see exactly what's going on with that. But it smells like horse sweat. Maybe like some wet hay, just any kind of funkiness that if it smells like you don't want to drink it, you probably won't. There's a term in wine that's called corked, and it's a TCA. It's a malfunction of the cork, and this is why you see synthetic corks and you're seeing screw caps more and more. The technology for screw caps is there. You think about the cork failure percentage in the wine industry is somewhere around 3%. I don't know of any other industry that tolerates a 3% failure rate. If GM, if 3% of their cars fell apart on the highway, they probably wouldn't be in business for very long, right? So if you do get a bottle that's corked, it almost always, just take it back to where you bought it. And we're going to talk about where to buy wine in just a minute. And I'm going to open my red here.
You want me to do it while you talk?
All right.
It's not good.
This one. Hold, please. Sorry, technical difficulties. This isn't life on quarantine fun. So now we're going to open our red Bordeaux. All right, that's backwards to me. I assume it's backwards to you all too. So here's a 2018 Chateau Juan. Now, again, this doesn't have the grape on it, but it's France, and we're in Bordeaux, so we know we're drinking a blend, right? There's 5 grapes that are permissible, 5 red grapes that are permissible to grow in Bordeaux. There is Merlot, which is the most predominantly grown grape. There is Cabernet Sauvignon, which is actually a natural cross-blending of Sauvignon Blanc and Cab Franc. Cab Franc being the next grape, and then there's Petit Verdot and Malbec. Malbec is not seen in France like it once was. So for this one, we're going to pick a nice a nice glass for a big bolder wine. You can see the size is a bit different. We're going to allow for more room for the aromas, and we're going to pour this a little more shallow. Again, about a 5-ounce pour. And then the same type of thing. This is again a right bank Bordeaux. It's just off the boundaries of Saint-Emilion, which is a very famous region within Bordeaux. We're gonna give it a. I've been drinking this wine a lot. This has been on sale at Martin for I think about 21, and then for $1 you get a second bottle. And I can tell you, as of today, they are out. So We get hints of cherry, dry fruit, maybe some plum, a little pepper, maybe a touch of oak on the nose, pinch of vanilla. Oh, I just love it. We'll take a look at the legs. We get some nice legs off this thing. Is this Superior? Let's see. Sometimes you will see, no, it's the other one. If you see Superior on a bottle of French wine, it doesn't mean it's superior wine. It just means it has more alcohol content than most of the wine. So it's well over 12%. I just absolutely love this wine. Yes, earthy, definitely earthy. I love it. I get that cherry again. It's reiterated with the cherry. Plum, dark fruit. See, I could drink this all day. And it's almost like, and then it finishes again with more of that sweet cherry. And obviously I'm more into red than white wine. But white wine is damn good too. All right. And so this, a lot of times with these wines, it's hard to find out exactly what the blend is. I was trying to Google it. I found that the 2015 blend was 90% Merlot and 10% Cab Franc. Then the 2017 blend had some Cabernet Sauvignon in it. So it changes a little bit. Most of these try and lean towards the house style of wine. They want a consistent product. So while they're slightly different, man, they just run just a consistent product between vintages. For the money, this is just a phenomenal wine. So when we talk about red grapes and red wine, mainly three styles, kind of a fruity and rosé, more vibrant wines, something a little more complex, a little richer, smoother, and then those big, bold, and you stole it. The name of the wine is Chateau Jouan. It's Chateau, C-H-A-T-E, A-U, and then Jouan, J-O-U-A-N-I-N. Call Martin, see if they have any more. Or you may be able to find it online. It's been one of my favorite quarantine wines so far. All right, so some red grapes. So rosé, it's French term for pink or these rose-colored wines, and this is made from one of two ways. The pink color kind of indicates that it was it's definitely made from a red grape that was either allowed to sit on the skins, the stems, and the seeds for a little while to have some of the color bleed through, or it's white with a little bit of red added to it. They press the red grapes right away and then don't let them sit on the skins and then add the wine back into it. And yes, the Chateau Damas is very good as well. Another Bordeaux. I've been drinking a lot of that, available at Martin as well. So I hope that answers your question as to how rosé is made. It's red grapes that, again, either have some of the skins bleed through or have a little bit of red wine added just to color them. It's a great summertime. Like, if you want to drink wine while it's still light out, I like it sitting on the back porch. They're typically dry, or at most barely sweet, kind of tart, really nice hints of fresh fruits, and they kind of get the thing going from the freshness, and these are best served chilled. All right. Let's see. With these, we pretty much always have they're acidic, light to medium body. Again, very little bits of residual sugar. Big in France, in Provence. In fact, there's one area in Languedoc-Roussillon that is Tavel. So I guess monks at one point in the area thought that the rosé from Tavel was so good that that's all they could label as Tavel. So if you're drinking a Tavel wine, it's automatically a a rosé. So we got a question: what type of food would I pair with this? With the red. See, I would see this as being a relatively food-friendly wine. I could see eating salmon with this for one. I think it would hold up to meat if you're doing something more gamey like a lamb. You might want to go something a little bit heavier, but definitely some salmon, some roasted veg, maybe some Brussels sprouts would work well with this. It's got the acid that'll cut through the fat. How do you know we're in a red wine peaks and when you should drink? Well, only about maybe 5 to 10% of the wine is meant to be cellared. It's got to be the right wine. Most white wines don't. Pretty much everything you want to drink within about 10 years. And look, honestly, like so these Bordeaux's, they can take some age on them, or Burgundy as well. And Burgundy is another one. Anytime you're drinking Burgundy wine, if it's red, it's Pinot Noir. If it's white, it's Chardonnay. Those are the two grapes you can grow in Burgundy. I want to have a couple of these Bordeaux's and stick them in the cooler for a few years and see if I can hang on to them. These are very young wines, and they're very drinkable for such a young wine. All right, other red grapes. Gamay is a common one. If anybody's a fan of Beaujolais, that's going to be the Gamay grape. Again, a lot of red fruit, raspberry, cherry. You get some chocolate out of here, maybe some tobacco. You see this exclusively in Beaujolais and Beaujolais Nouveau and Beaujolais Village. A lot of these Beaujolais wines are heartier and more deeper, kind of more intense fruit flavor. That you can, some of these Beaujolais will benefit with some aging. All right. Stemless stainless steel wine glasses. I don't know. I've never used stainless steel wine glasses. I mean, the wine is made and aged in stainless steel, so I can't see where it would hurt. The lack of stemware. I mean, for me, I'd say that's great for the pool. You know, we have some stemless plastic wine glasses that go to the pool and whatnot, because these are great, but they do break easily. My favorite wine for under $15. I'll get to that in a couple of minutes. Let's see, where are we? Okay, next up, one of my very favorite grapes, if not my favorite grape, Pinot Noir. I'm a big fan of Pinot Noir. This is a more temperamental grape. It's not as easy to grow. It's like a Cabernet Sauvignon. This grape dates back over 2,000 years and it's grown all over in the world. Oregon and Washington State, Oregon in particular, are just doing some phenomenal Pinot Noirs. If you look at a map, and if you go from Bordeaux, France, and go all the way across in the latitude, you end up in Oregon. So again, a free plug for Willamette Valley, Oregon, Pinot Noir. And you talk about a food-friendly wine. This is like one of the best. I think this will go with fish, this will go with meat, this will go with vegetables, this will go with the grill, this will go out of the oven, off the skillet. It doesn't matter. It's a very food-friendly wine. It'll stand up to tuna and salmon. For me, I always, cherry is the first impression out of Pinot Noir, backed up with some maybe raspberries, black cherry, dry cherry, cranberry. You get into some earthy tones, some maybe mushrooms, some fungus, peat, even like coffee notes, tobacco, a little bit of bake shop in here. You can pull vanilla, and Pinot Noir also has tannin to it, which is a great asset for such a light wine. Absolutely love it. Drink a lot of Pinot Noir. France, obviously, Champagne, Burgundy, Oregon, the Willamette Valley in particular. California does a lot. I find California has a very stereotypical take to their Pinot Noirs. Russian River Valley has been doing some really good ones. Let's see, what else? Cab Franc, it's another blending grape, famous in Bordeaux, but it's also, it can be a standalone varietal in Loire. Again, we're talking dried fruits, strawberry, raspberry, some tobacco, maybe some herbs, and even bell pepper. And if you think you smell bell pepper in a wine, you're not crazy. You definitely get bell pepper out of wine. Kind of medium body, medium tannin, medium to high acidity. Again, Bordeaux, Loire Valley. You're seeing this in California. Even Canada and New York are growing some Cab Franc now. Malbec. Here is a grape that originated in France and South America. That seemed to have taken it over. Argentina is doing some just phenomenal Malbecs, and it's a great buy in this area. Again, dried cherry, dark fruit, currants, maybe some rose, a little bit of bake shop. There's tobacco again. This is going to have some tannin to it as well. Holds up really well to foods, cheeses, and cheese and wine is phenomenal. Like if you like the Sauvignon Blanc, go get some goat cheese. It's like they're made to go with each other. Oysters, scallops, all that minerality with the Sauvignon Blanc. Merlot. So Merlot took a hit with the Sideways movie. It's often called the Sideways effect, but Merlot is still one of the top-selling grapes in the world. All right. This is a great blending variety. Anybody drinking this red, you're drinking a lot of Merlot. Remember, Merlot is the predominant grape in Bordeaux. With Merlot, you're going to get a lot of fruit right off, berry and plum, some of this bake shop again. When I say bake shop, I'm talking about like maybe some baking spices, chocolate or some vanilla. And the vanilla, anytime you get vanilla out of the wine, you're going to get, that's coming from the wood, the oak barrels that it's aged in. So, you've got some wood, the vanillin. We're looking at medium acidity. This can be fairly high in alcohol content as well. Great blended with Cabernet Sauvignon. Cabernet Sauvignon is just another great blending grape. You're seeing a lot of Merlot in California, Napa Valley in particular, Sonoma. Sonoma and Napa are right next to each other, just the other side of the Mayacamas Mountains. Chile and Italy, you're seeing this. Washington State, Columbia Valley doing some great wines. Another one I wanted to mention at least is Sangiovese. Any Chianti fans out there? I wish you could put hands up or something. It's almost like I don't know if anybody's listening out here. This has been, if anybody's ever heard of Super Tuscans, this was the Italian winemakers that didn't want to be bound to Italian wine laws and wanted some freedom. So they just broke from tradition and started taking the Sangiovese and blending it with French grapes like Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot to create these Super Tuscans wines that were dirt cheap. So this was a big phenomenon in the 80s. And since then, Italy has designated an entire new designation, the IGP, to address the situation, and now they get more money out of it. So Sangiovese, you're getting this dark fruit, again, some bake shop, some earth, a little tobacco, full to medium bodies. This is mainly an Italian grape. Tempranillo is another great grape, and I want to get to cheap wine buys, wine on the budget. So this is the big grape of Spain. There's 14 different synonyms for Tempranillo, depending on what town you're in. But don't tell somebody from different towns that it's all the same grape, because they'll argue it until you die. But some great Spanish Tempranillos, Rioja, it's great Portugal, growing a lot of this as well. And let's see, we're going to get up to Cabernet Sauvignon, sometimes referred to as the king of red wines. This is the big boy, big, bold, lots of tannin to it, very dry, big body. This is the most widely grown grape in the world. I believe it still holds up to be that way. very intense, complex aromas. We're getting this tobacco. We're getting these bake shop notes again. Even like intense, like black olive notes, blackberry jam, plum, cassis, high in tannin, medium acid, medium to big full body. And this can have a very warming, like a nice winter when I lived up north, and when it got cold, a fire and a glass of Cabernet in the evening. Oh, c'est bon. All right. So Bordeaux, France, a big one on this, big in Napa Valley, big in Tuscany, Washington State, Australia, and Chile. What else? We'll just do two more here. Syrah and Syrahs, the same grapes. So if it's got a Z in it, it's Australian, kind of Australia's kind of really done its own thing with it. This is like a more rustic or earthy kind of wine. Can be very intensely fruit forward and very bold. If you get a good one, it is just phenomenal. We're driven here with these bake shop again. Fruit, dark fruit, dried fruit, maybe a little leather, tobacco, tar, even. Almost like there's a great one out there called Forest Floor. And if you smell it, you just kind of know it. And the more you do this, the easier it gets. It's a very dark and intense wine, but can be absolutely delicious. Big in the Rhone Valley actually has this GSM lane, Grenache, Mourvedre, and Syrah that are just some wonderful blends. And let's see, lastly, I want to talk about Zinfandel. This grape is native to Croatia, big in Italy, where it's known as Primavito. This is more like kind of more exotic spices, dried fruit, dry raspberry, blackberry, a little bit of vanilla, some spice, like kind of cigar box type of aromas, medium acidity, medium tannins, kind of good levels of alcohol. This is kind of known actually as California's own grape, especially like Paso Robles is big on Zinfandel. Okay, that's all the grapes I'm going to do because I want to get to some other things, and I've missed questions. I don't know if anybody. Yes, Sangiovese, Super Tuscan's much cheaper. California Cabs I'm kind of hit or miss on. I find the trend with California Cabernets is too much residual sugar. Not a big fan of a Camus. You know, I like my wines a little bit drier. I prefer the French style of wines. So some tips on buying wine. I recommend going to a wine store. I do like Martin Wine Cellar. I give them a free plug, I guess, and I'm trying to get them to work more with the wine program at the University of New Orleans. Go there. You're going to do a little better than grocery store wines, stereotypical grocery store wines. Try and find a salesperson you like, maybe whose palate kind of reflects yours. You feel like they have a good sense of taste, and the more you work with them, the more you get to know, they're going to be able to make recommendations. I got a guy I've been working with for a few years now, and I'll go in, I'm like, hey, what's new? What have you had? How's this? And I will buy things solely based on his recommendations. Trader Joe's, you can really find some steals at Trader Joe's, and if you get in there and start talking to people, there's usually a person there or two that's really into wines. Dornax, as far as grocery store wine selection, has a really good one. I got a list somewhere on my email if I can get to it of somebody's other favorite wines. As far as budget buys, sales. I'm a big fan on sales. Like these Buck Up Bordeaux sales have just been phenomenal. I mean, for $1 more, and yeah, I'm sure they're marking the wines up a couple of dollars a bottle, but these guys, they also, the benefit of the wine stores, they also own Wines Unlimited, which is a wine distributor who is distributing to restaurants and other wholesalers. So they're direct importers of some of these wines, and they can buy a whole lot, put it on sale, sell it really quick, run a bunch of money through the bank, and be able to pay off the wine before the invoices due. So sometimes it's a matter of running dollars through the bank, and you can really, you get to know these people. get to trust them, get them to know that you're serious about it, and you can really find some great buys. Sometimes you get case discounts buying online. Direct from the vineyard is not always the best price. Now, they do have some clubs that are really interesting, but, you know, we take students out there, and I don't think that wine, they're in it for profit too. They're making maximum buck off of that. Not saying you can't get some great buys directly from the vineyard. Another great way to go is emerging markets, right? These South America, I've got some great Argentinian wines, great Chilean wines. South Africa, I've had some wonderful wines. Australia, New Zealand, right? Portugal. I've been drinking a lot of Portuguese wine the last couple of years. It's unknown. Portugal's wine region grew up in rather isolation, so there's like over 300 grapes that are only indigenous to Portugal. I'll give you a big tip. Douro Valley, Vino Verde. I love this wine. It's low in alcohol. It's slightly effervescent. I know it's somebody's favorite on the list. It's just delicious. I call it like a lawnmower wine. After you cut the grass, you can drink a glass of this wine. It's just phenomenal. There's some red Portuguese, and these are cheaper. They don't have the name. You know, these Spanish Tempranillos. Again, another great tip is I don't know if I want to give out my. So, a lot of times, some of these wines are just outside of the appellation. So maybe they're not quite in Bordeaux, or there's one in particular I drink that's not quite in Burgundy. It's just outside the appellation, but it's damn good. You know, it's hard to get a good wine, a good Burgundy wine, which is, as we talked about, Pinot Noir, for under $40. Maybe you can get something in the upper 30s. Whereas this, it's a little go-to Valmecene, Louis Latour, Pinot Noir for, I don't know, $13, $14. I think it's $13. It's just phenomenal. So it's just outside the appellations. You know, something across the street from the line in Napa Valley, it might still be pretty good. You know? Let's see what kind of questions that I missed here. Tannins, is that what gives you a headache? No, that's the alcohol that gives you a headache the next day. Some people will say sulfites, but I find it's the alcohol. Yep, Super Tuscan's less expensive. No Chianti. Sparkling reds. You should be able to. You get a lot of Italian. There's oh boy, I had one, a Sancerre red. And Sancerre is almost all Sauvignon Blanc, but they do, if it's red, it's Pinot Noir. That was absolutely delicious. Goat cheese and white Bordeaux, yes. Okay, here's an interesting question. When wine is being made, are all these amazing flavors from the grapes only, or do winemakers add other flavors during the process? Okay, so they can't really add other flavors, but there's influences, okay? One of which, so we talked about a couple, leaving things on the lees, which are the dead yeast cells and the other sediment from the wine that can create flavor. Malactic fermentation is another one, the converting of malic acid into lactic acid. There is the introduction of oak, right? Be it in staves, chips, or barrels. So there's a lot of different factors, but for the most part, it's the grapes themselves. Favorite wine for under $15. Well, if I tell you, there won't be any left for me, but I told you how to pick them out. Wine clubs, I have no experience with them, but I never joined a record club back in the day either. And I did give you one of my favorite tips, that Valmecene Pinot Noir for 15. And as you drink, your taste is gonna, mine I know has changed over the years. There was a couple of Trader Joe's go-to that I just can't drink anymore. So, okay, read those. Favorite Cabernets and Merlots. I honestly don't drink much straight Merlot, although I'm pretty much drinking it now. If this is 90%, I'm loving it. Cabernets. Let's see if you want something affordable. What's that one? Xanthos out of Napa Valley. I thought was very good. I'm kind of drawing a blank. I'm admittedly bad sometimes with wines off the top of my head. I've got a lot of tasting notes. Donati has done some nice Cabernets. And another tip, like most of these wine stores, they do free tastings. Go, and if they know you're buying, you're not just being a hazer and sucking down free wine, they're going to open things for you, you know. Swirl does tastings, Pearl. I don't know what some of your favorite wine stores are, but support these local little wine stores. Unoaked wines. Yeah, I love unoaked wines. That's stainless steel or concrete. Yes, I did blame it on the alcohol. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Meiomi for under $20. That's again, it's not one of my personal favorites. There's a little bit too much residual sugar in it for me. It's a little too sweet. I like something that's a little drier. I'll tell you the oh, I'll give you a good one. Hold on.
Which one? It's not the one I pulled out. Oh, it's on, yeah. It's a 23.
Okay, this is a Martin exclusive. Another free plug for Martin. And do me a favor, if you go in and buy wine at Martin Wine Cellar, please tell them I sent you, that you know, Mark from the wine program at the University of New Orleans, because I'm trying to get them to be kind to UNO. So La Petite Delvege, this is a Russian River Pinot Noir. It's about $23 a bottle. I had it last night for the first time. I absolutely loved it. So Sonoma County, California, I recommend it. That's over $15 again, but that's a go-to. Here's the Valmusain, about 13 bucks or so. Louis Latour. Now, Louis Latour is a what's called a wine negociant. So they don't grow grapes, they don't make wine, but they do everything else. As far as contracting sales, buying, selling, the Louis Latour is a big one, and there are some great wines. All right, we've extended the time. I'm almost out of breath from rushing through all that. So we have more time. I don't have to be anywhere, and I've got 2 open bottles of wine. So anybody else have any questions? We didn't talk about sparkling wines at all. Let's see. I did mention that in order, so it's like the square is a rectangle, but the rectangle is not a square rule. All sparkling wine is not champagne, but all champagne is sparkling wine. In order to be called champagne, it has to be made in Champagne, France, and made from the 3 grapes, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier, and done in method Champenois, which is the traditional method where there is a primary fermentation and then the secondary fermentation in the bottle, which means there's a second addition of yeast, and then it goes through the process of racking and feeding. I'm going to pour wine on myself, where they slowly turn the bottle this way and encourage the yeast cap. And sparkling wine's a whole nother class. I can't get into that right now. What else do we have? Any thoughts on sangria? It's all right. I'd probably rather just have the straight wine. I guess it's a good outlet for some cheaper wine. We used to make it at Vaqueros years and years ago, but it can be quite refreshing. That's for sure. What else? Anybody else have anything? What didn't we talk about briefly? Again, drink what you like. It's so quiet out there. And again, I think with door wine, hold on. It really just depends on the wine, and like many things, it's what can you get for it, right? Does it have a name? So here's a good story. Okay, so the United States wine industry really was kind of fledgling. In the 1800s, we were more spirit driven, and then beer. I mean, originally it was cider, but then went to beer and spirits. So in the 1970s, there's what's called the Judgment of Paris, where a English wine merchant in Paris wanted to show off some American wines, and he came over here. There's a great movie about it called Bottle Shock, and they brought in all these American wines, California wines, took them over to France, and they did this grand tasting. And the United States cleaned house and instantaneously put American wines, particularly Napa Valley wines, on the map. The famous one being Chateau Montoliena. It's if you want a good watch, again, Bottle Shock. It's got Chris Pine or Chris Pratt. I think they're the same guy, but that's Chris Pine. I think that's in it. It's a fun little watch, but it really did put American wines on the map and change the landscape overnight. And the rest of the world had to take American wine seriously. And I think in 2006, don't quote me on the date, but they did the tasting again, and America did win again. Let's see, any new questions? Apothic. It sounds familiar. I think it's a grocery store label. I'm sure I've had it. Arsenic levels in California wines. That's new on me. I don't know. I'm not saying it's not true, but I don't know. I look forward to seeing you in wine class, Tabitha. I'd be happy to do this again if they'll have me back. Yeah, so I mean, if you want to do this again, flood Rachel Massey's inbox with what topics you would like, and I can put something together.
Hey, Chef, it's Rachel just coming in. The voice from beyond here, but we'd love to have you back.
I'm tired of listening to myself talk. Oh, Victoria Farmer, she was lovely. She went on the wine trip too. Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you.
And we'll send out a follow-up survey after this. So if anybody, we'll ask for suggestions on any topics anyone would like to explore a little further. And we're just so excited to have so many people joining and excited about wine.
Okay,
and
so
really appreciate you.
Not to cut you off, Rachel, but okay, so I've heard this about Barefoot and some other cheaper wines, maybe. I don't know. Barefoot, I'm not a particular, that's a mass market, almost gas station wine. But, if you like it, start there. The wine class last year, I had a student come in, and he started at gas station wines. And by the end of the class, he was at grocery store wines and says, Chef, I really can't drink the gas station wines anymore. That's great. Oh, I love my dog too. Thanks. He's been out of this. That's Jinx the dog. He approves this message. Yeah, we'd love to send out a survey. What else? How many? What? I don't know. Beer talk. Yeah. Oh, Elena's
Hey,
here.
it's Rachel again. I was going to say, as a follow-up, we'd love to be able to send out a list of some of the high points and selections that you've talked about, because I know it's hard to write down so quickly.
Oh, I know. Well, and I was like, stressed for time, so if I was talking too fast, I apologize. Let's see. We did get a response to what's your favorite go-to inexpensive wines for under $10. St. Michael, 19 Crimes, 14 Hands, Chateau Saint Michel, Cabernet Sauvignon, Oyster Bay. Also a lot of grocery stores. That's good. Here's somebody with Vino Verde. So one of the things I want you to do is get out of the grocery store. Go hit some wine stores. Tell them what you like. Grenache. I like some Grenache. Primal Roots. Barefoot. Côte de Rhône. That's an appellation. More than a wine, so you're drinking a blend there. Gallo Family Sweet Strawberry. Apoptotic Red. Jam Jar Sweet Straw. A lot of sweet wines. That's been the American palate a lot. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Venture out. Try some drier wines. Josh, that's a big one. Yellowtail Australian. Boda Box. That's familiar. I think I've heard that. The Menage a Trois. Cupcake, Gilliam Rose. Brut Rosé, Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's has some good wines. They do some stuff every once in a while. You find a gem where they get they just buy out an entire label, and it can really be some good wines. Don't write them off. It's also kind of hit or miss. Generally spend more than $10 on wine. Yeah, unfortunately, me too. I used to be able to spend less than 10, but some I found like right at the $10 mark. And when you're drinking these sale wines, so like this Bordeaux we're drinking right now, that's a $20 bottle of wine. But when you get one for $1, guess what? Now it's an $11 bottle of wine. That's not bad. Hey, Evan. Yeah, I'll work on getting a list of my suggestions out. But again, if I give all you guys my great suggestions, then what am I going to drink? I'll tell you how to pick them out. So now we've come to the part of the program where you watch me drink. My B list. And yes, you all do drink that much. Costco wines. Ooh, there's been a couple of good ones. Actually, Dr. Shako turned me on to one. I can't think of the name of, but there are. The thing about like Costco and Trader Joe's is they have great purchasing power. So occasionally you can find some gems. I don't have a B list. Nobody's got anything else? Well, I mean, if we don't have any more questions, unless you want to chime in here with anything, Rachel, I don't know.
Sorry, I was muting, but I'm coming back to join you, and I will say cheers. I actually had your wine pick, so I've been joining you.
Oh yeah, yes. You have the how do you like the red, the Chateau Juan?
Awesome.
That's a nice little wine, isn't it?
It's a nice wine. So I was very excited to get turned on for the Bordeaux and the extra bottle for $1. So thank you.
I think it's good for 20. For 10, it's phenomenal. And if you got a couple bottles and you can put one away for a rainy day, I would recommend trying to hang on to it for a year or two. That's always the hard part.
Yeah. Well, I will. And thank you everyone for joining us.
Everybody's background. Everybody gets to see my background. I can't see what's doing in everybody else's background.
Well, you see mine. I've got my child eating dinner.
That's all right. I got a dog in and out.
That's how we do these days. So, okay, we'll expect some more programming and content coming to y'all soon from the Alumni Association. Chef Mark actually is going to be doing a cooking demo with us in a couple weeks. So we will be announcing that. It'll be a dish you can make. With things largely, have at home, and we'll be doing it during the hour. But we would like to have another beverage session as well.
I can do beverage, and if anybody has something they'd like to see as far as the cooking demo, suggestions are welcome. You know, I don't know. We did one for I'm not even sure who it was for, but it's through the university. I did a crawfish Veronica demo.
yeah.
So we'll see. Be on the lookout for that one.
That'd be
It's,
great.
very similar to
Yeah.
another dish with crawfish and pasta and cream sauce.
Yes, I'm familiar in honor of Jess. So.
Yeah.
Ah. Thank you again. This has been absolutely lovely, and we will see you again soon. We'll put on the survey also, yeah, I mean, suggestions for other topics in the beverage area, but also maybe what you'd want to learn to cook at home.
Sure. I'm game for anything, guys. Pleasure to be here. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Everybody have a great night.
All righty. Bye.